Time for the Angler Within podcast with Roy Bilby.
I got to tell you, I'm excited because we are coming up on turkey season just a few more days. May 1st. Here in New York, it's May 1st to May 31st. It is the month of little to no sleep for this fisherman because I live in the middle of the woods. I can go right out my back door, climb the ridge, and in 6 minutes, I'm turkey hunting, and they roost back there all the time. I'm in a really good spot for a turkey hunter, and I cannot stop doing it. I remember the last year I worked, I turkey hunted 25 out of 31 possible days, and that's getting up at 4:15, suiting up, hiking the hill in the dark, sitting down in a good spot, and calling and talking to birds and having that whole conversation and seeing what they do when they fly down. And mind you, I had to be at work at 7 a.m. and I was always on time. And my fair share of those mornings, I made it to work with a turkey beer in my pocket because turkey hunting is something that's been tremendously successful for me. And I never really did it seriously till we built this house in the woods 23 years ago. I think I've taken over three dozen birds in that time. So it's been very successful. But I'll tell you what, it's addictive, incredibly addictive.
Yeah, I know people who have almost gotten divorced over turkey hunting. Not really, but getting in some hot water with their wives because of how much time they put in. But are you using a bow or a gun, or are you using a mouth call or a box call? That's my question.
All right. All I can do on a mouth call is gag, and I do not sound anything like a turkey. My forte is a handheld pot. I do my best work with that. Box calls, I have one, but I just don't use it much. I have I have a copper pot that I use, which is great for long distance because it's so loud. But I have my pet calls. I got one I can purr and cluck and yelp, and I can do everything with that call. And that's the one that's brought in the most birds for me. That's been my most consistent call. And I have my favorite striker that I use, and that's what's worked for me. But it is the closest thing there is in the woods to a chess match. I mean, you got to anticipate their move, and they changed. You can pattern them every day up until the season starts. And then when it opens, they'll do something completely different than you had them dialed in on. Mm-hmm. They've done that to me over and over and over. But again, it's a chess match, and that's the fun part, is trying to outsmart these birds and put yourself in position where you can call one in. And there's nothing worse than a bunch of toms that are grouped up with a bunch of hens, because trying to call them away from the real deal is near impossible. But when they're ready to come in, some days it's like you can do no wrong. The first one I called in and shot on my own, he was ready. He was calling, gobbling, and I climbed the ridge, and I called once to locate him, and he gobbled, and another one gobbled real close. I'm like, holy cow, I'm right on top of this bird. So I sat down. He gobbled a second time, and I actually caught a glimpse of him flying down. I was getting there kind of late, and I'm like, holy cow, he's close. So I called once, he immediately gobbled, and his head pops up coming up the hill. And I'm like, holy cow, I called him my 2-minute Tom. I didn't even have my face mask or my gloves on yet. And I'm trying to get my gun in position because he's behind a tree. And I look, and that tree's only about 40 yards down the hill from me. I went, good grief. When he steps out from that tree, he's in range. And he stepped out, gobbled once, and then he stuck his head up to look for that hen. And I shot, and he went down. I stood up, and I said out loud, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe it. It wasn't all of 2 minutes, but here's a bird who was a mature Tom, had no hens, and he was just ready. And I was the first one he heard that day. He's like, "Giddy up, I'm in, count me in." And yeah, I couldn't believe it. Now I'm hunting a ridge, and it's a long ways to the bottom. And when I shot, he just dropped. I'm like, cool. I've been here 2 minutes. I'm not going to be late for work today. I walked down that 40 yards, and he was stock still until I got 2 steps away, and then the nerves kicked in. He was dead, but the spasms kicked in. He flopped once, and he became a feathered cannonball rolling down that hill. And here I am running after him, going, "Stop, stop, stop." Finally, about 3/4 of the way down to the bottom of this hill, he landed against 2 trees and stopped there, and he was still dead.
Hmm.
But I get down there, and I've been chasing this thing downhill. I'm winded, and I look, and I gotta climb all the way back to the top of that ridge. I looked at my watch. It was still early. I said, "Yeah, I'll still make it in time for work," but good grief. Now, everything was good until he started to roll. Now I gotta work to get him back home. But yeah, that starts May 1st, just a few more days. And I scouted this morning and found 2 toms, and only one of them's got hens. It's only got 2 hens, but he's the bigger one. So probably the one I'm going to go after. I got a scout behind my house tomorrow morning, and turkey season. The month of little to no sleep, but very, very rewarding. It's the only hunting we get to do in the spring. And if you haven't turkey hunted, man, there's nothing like it. But you have to want to do it.
Yeah.
I've had that conversation with my wife and said, I'm a morning person. She's not, and I get that. Well, not really, but I have told her, because I'm so enamored with this turkey hunting, that just once, it's right behind our house. Just once, you got to get up with me at 4 a.m, go out in that pitch black,
I'm
climb
sure
that ridge. It only takes 6 minutes.
I'm sure
And
she
just to
loves the
sit
idea.
down. Yeah. And just to sit down in that darkness and watch the day come alive. And when you hear that first gobble, if you don't get chills down your back and go, "Oh, game time," just to hear it and experience that, you need to do that just once.
Mm.
And she smiled and leaned in, and she said, "No, I don't."
There you go.
Because it holds no fascination for her. But for
See?
me, it's I'm just completely enamored with it. Love turkey hunting.
Do you ever use the decoys?
I have decoys. I've not used them with much success. I've used them. I don't use them a lot. I usually prefer to have that bird come looking, where's this hen?
Mm-hmm.
Then he's sweeping everywhere and not. Decoys are good because they give them a focal point, but I want that bird to come looking. A lot of times with a decoy, they'll hang up at a distance to display, and they're still too far out. So
All right.
I think without hunting with a decoy, they keep coming in looking, and that's how I've shot most of my birds. But I did use a decoy to call in my son's first bird successfully, and that bird was absolutely focused on that decoy. He was just circling around,
Doing his dance.
doing well. No, we had the decoy on an open field, and he was all in this low growth woodlot and underbrush, circling the perimeter until he entered the field. I think he was trying to figure out the best way to come in where he would be seen the best. But when he did come in, he was in complete 100% full strut, and my son made a perfect shot. But he took his time. He didn't rush it. He waited till that bird was well within range and just made an excellent shot. It was a foggy morning, and it was awesome. What an experience.
Sounds. So, question: you ever use any as seen on TV turkey hunting stuff?
No.
Well,
And
or would you if there was some?
no, not really. I like everything I got. A lot of the as seen on TV stuff, like fishing lures, for instance, there's a lot of as seen on TV fishing lures, those infomercials, and some of them are iconic.
I grew up on them, obviously, and the number one lure that pops in my mind, there's a couple of them, but the one that I was most excited about getting when I was a kid was this one right here.
4-inch lure is used for bass, for trout, for pike, for most of the fish that are caught
The flying lure.
Inside this country, meaning in the
this thing. We would watch it on TV. This guy's just holding it in his hand. I guess it must have been the patent video. I was hoping to get like the, a 1 minute commercial. Let me see here.
Yeah.
I'll try one more. Of course, I'll have a.
Never venture out.
We've got a commercial first. Because I don't pay for my YouTube.
Think about what's being said here. The flying lure goes away from you, unlike
it swims
any other
away.
lure. Well, what's the significance of that?
Flying lure.
It means that you can get into any fish holding area where you've never had access before, even on a lake that you've fished over.
Which was the deal. It swam towards the fish that were holding under structure.
The flying lure. Get this. The flying lure. I remember that. That is the one and only as seen on TV lure I ever purchased. I bought that.
And it works.
That's
if you know how to
for
jig,
me.
if you understand how it works and you can jig it, you can use it.
Exactly. Our problem was me and my buddy, we both ordered it. We tore open the packages and headed for the lake and left the instructions at home. We didn't need those. We were too smart for that. We rigged them backwards. We rigged them the way we normally fish. It was basically a flattened.
So did you use
like a tube lure?
Did you use the guide holes that were in there? Or did you just hook?
We just did it backwards. We rigged it the way we were used to rigging a tube. And of course, it didn't go backwards. Like, well, we got rooked. This thing's a gimmick, but it wasn't. It wasn't until we actually rigged it, read the instructions and went, oh, okay, so that's how it worked. Then it would go backwards. And yeah, you could cast it in front of a dock and let it drop and it would glide right back underneath that dock and you'd catch fish.
Driving the fish insane. One of my personal best fish. Have you fished Honeywell Lake?
No, I've heard a lot about it. I've been around it,
Yep.
but I've never had the opportunity to fish it.
This is my big story about flying lure, and then we'll go on to the next one. But
Yeah.
true story. I was at this point in time, it was about 10 years ago. I was living in Honeywell, and that's where Honeywell Lake is, obviously. And
Yeah.
I was staying with a good buddy of mine and started looking around for bait shops because of the Finger Lakes. There's old timey bait shops all over the place. So there's probably fewer now, but at that point, this is in 2010, 2011. There were more than there are now. But anyway, I went into this, Roy, classic old shop, minnow tanks, smells like dead fish, and probably a 75-year-old lady smoking a cigarette in the building. It was awesome. So
The bait shop.
I'm walking around. All I can hear is the sound of the pumps running the tanks, and I look down and there's like a bunch of new old stock, sun warped and sun faded packaging, but about 11 or 12 of the medium sized flying lures packages, right? And so I got them all for $1 a piece. All those packages.
Cow. I think when it was sold, it was like $19.95 or
for
something
the
like
for
that.
the big kit, and for the smaller one, it was like, I don't know, $10 for a pack of 5 or something, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But the thing you needed were the hooks. The flying lure was, since they brought it back once, but they didn't use the lead hooks anymore, and the weight is what's important on that, right? It has to be heavy enough to make it do what it has to do. And so I took that, and they had the crawtails, so I had the crawtail ones too. My buddy and I went out on the Honeywell Lake that night at the magic hour. We got on the water around, this is in like June, right? And so we got in the water around, I don't know, 5 or 6. So close to, we're in a small rowboat. Second cast with this crawtail, and my personal best bass flies out of the water with it in its mouth. I was probably about, I don't know, how far did I cast that? Probably like 50 or 60 feet. Just like messing around. And the fish was on it. We didn't have a net. And so the fish gets all bogged down in the lily pads and gets messed up with the seaweed. Now the thing weighs even more. And I can't tell, and it's not coming up. And we ended up getting it out of the water. We didn't have a scale, didn't have a measure. The only measure we had was on the cooler top.
Okay.
And it was bigger than the cooler top.
Ooh.
Huge. And this guy I was with, Joey, was like, where do I get these? I said, well, you could have got them down at this one shop, but I bought all of them. So I gave him a few. Well, we were in his boat. It was his boat we had a small john boat, like not even a john boat. It was like a short, it was like a dinghy essentially. It was in a dinghy with a troller.
Okay.
And we were just using that. But so I threw him a handful because it was his boat. So, but we got the thing out. The biggest fish I ever caught in my life was on the flying lure. Absolutely. To this day.
And we didn't catch anything on it when we started using it. Again, we were rigging it backwards so it couldn't do what it was designed to do. Once we finally figured out that we were doing it wrong, yeah, we caught fish on it. And this was long before when this lure came out. That was the only way to fish docks. Nobody was skipping docks at that point in time. Now we do it with bait casting gear.
Sure.
Yeah, skipping under dock is second nature now, but back in those days, boy, if you wanted to reach something and an out of the way spot, you had to have the flying lure. And I remember those. That was one of those. That was not a gimmick. That was an ingenious design that did what it was supposed to do. A lot of the as seen on TV lures were gimmicks and fads and your basic infomercial stuff. If most of the time, if you're buying infomercial stuff, you're getting
junk.
second rate gear.
Yeah,
I think
mass
a lot of the
produced for
time.
cheap stuff.
There was another one of those as seen on TV lures that was also very productive, and that was the banjo minnow. And the reason that was endorsed by Babe Winkleman, they got a big name TV fisherman to sign on with them and endorse their product, which did not hurt sales at all. And the other thing that helped sales was that it was basically a soft plastic jerk bait, and those catch fish. I mean, you take the Zoom Fluke or the Zoom Super Fluke,
Same thing.
it's a basic design as the banjo minnow. It's a soft plastic jerk bait,
But
and
the
they're just-
banjo was segmented a little bit more, and it had a larger head.
Yeah.
It had the heavy. The weight was in the eyes, right?
and you could use it as a swim bait or soft plastic jerk bait, and those baits are highly productive. So it was just their version of a popular bait at the time, but it sold a ton because it actually caught fish.
Right.
The problem is most of these infomercials are designed towards first-time fishermen who, this will give you an edge. This will give you an advantage. It's been banned in tournaments because it's so effective and that, people would buy it. Hey, that's the one I want.
So was the banjo minnow banned in tournaments?
No.
Oh.
Nobody I tournament fish with would pull one out during
What
the
was-
tournament.
What
I
was the
don't
deal
think so.
with the rubber band with that one? I know there's a rubber band involved. I never figured out how to use those.
I saw the advertisements. I went, it's just a soft plastic jerk bait / swim bait is all that is. Yeah, that'll catch fish, but I don't need it because I have good productive lures that do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I never jumped on the banjo minnow bandwagon, but I know a lot of guys that had them.
Right.
And some guys liked them, some guys didn't. But again, it was designed to catch the novice fisherman who was looking for a quick way to success.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the infomercial is capture those people that want to do this, show them how easy it is to do it, and you'll sell your product.
You know what it reminds me of? I'll tell you what it reminds me of, Roy. It reminds me of when you go to the state fair. Okay, you've been out to the New York State Fair, right? Or any fair,
Yep.
any
County fairs.
county fair, same deal. Usually at states you'll see these, but sometimes counties. You know the game where you walk up and the carny's got the stick with the chain that goes down to a ring, and you got to stand a beer bottle up,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
they make it look like it's the easiest thing on the planet.
Like the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, until you get it in your hand,
And then you pay your money and you can't do
and
it.
you can't do it, not even close.
Right.
So the amount of refinement that goes into doing one of those commercials.
Yeah.
Who knows how many takes it took to get the shot of the fish taking it and getting it out of the water.
Right. They didn't go out in an afternoon and shoot
No.
that. They went out for a week and
No, and the other thing
and got coverage.
and the as seen on TV is essentially the same psychology as a get rich quick scheme, and nothing is ever going to get you rich quick if it's, and if it does, it's probably bad. And number two is nothing replaces time on the water, as you said. So,
Right. No, nothing.
You,
Absolutely.
if you fish twice a year, Father's Day, and 4th of July with your once a year ugly stick you got from Walmart,
Ugh.
using that, with a combo reel on it still with that stupid trigger. You know that trigger? I used to take those off. The stupid trigger things on them for the open face, that little
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that was like it would like flick the bail for you. That was like the worst.
My
Anyway,
my favorite is the guy who still has the plastic sleeve on the cork grip, and he's still got
and the papers in it too. The instructions are in there too for your
and the
free
plastic
T-shirt.
zip ties holding his reel to the seat, even though it's locked into the real seat
Yes.
by the real seat. But he's still got those. That's so nobody can steal it from the store and slip it in their pocket.
Yeah, but everyone knows that the reels on a combo are what's the not worth the money part of it. Usually, you're gonna get a combo. You're paying for the rod, not the reel on a
But
combo.
But they do that so people can't steal them and slip the reel in their pocket. And if people are fishing with them, they still got the plastic cable ties
Yeah.
and the plastic sleeve on the cork handle. You're going to return that. You're going to fish with it.
The hell's
But
the
they
point of
just
stealing the
doesn't
reel if you don't
occur.
have a rod to go with it?
Yeah, I know. I've seen people take a casting rod, a bait casting rod, and put a spinning reel on it, and then
Oh,
hold it upside down and crank it backwards.
yes. That's
Ugh.
that also makes my skin crawl when I see that. Absolutely.
Yep.
That they're up there with people that litter. throwing their empty worm containers on the ground and
Oh yeah.
extra line not in the
Well,
tube.
there's one as seen on TV lure that when I saw it, I went, who's going to buy that? That nothing in the first off, the colors they came out in were like these, I think, pastel bright colors. I'm like, all right, the helicopter lure. This is what I'm talking about. There's
Mm.
nothing in the water that moves like the helicopter lure, and it came. I read up on it. It came with a swivel, but the swivel was poorly designed, so it actually this lure generated a tremendous amount of line twist,
Oh,
which created nightmares. But they got a big time, one of the biggest names in fishing, Roland Martin, and I could never figure out why he endorsed the helicopter lure. I mean, religiously. I There was one show they did where they went to a lake in Mexico, and he was in one boat with his partner. I don't know if it was Lake Baccarat or it was one of those Mexican lakes where they were promoting the lake, which is good. A lot of guys do that. And those lakes down, those Mexican bass lakes are phenomenal. They have a longer growing season. They stock them with a Florida strain bass, which grow quicker, and you can catch some tremendously. If you want to catch your best ever bass, head to Mexico because there's so many double digit bass caught there. It's insane. And they were fishing this lake, and he had the other two guys were with their guide in another section of the lake, and they called him on the cell phone and said, "Hey, so and so just caught one over 20 pounds. You got to see it." He's like, "Oh, 20 pounder. Oh, son, I got to see that. Bring it to us." And they came in with their boat and they pulled it out of the cooler, and it was this huge monster bass. And of course, I believed afterwards this was all a setup. Yeah, they caught the fish, but he said, "What'd you catch it on?" He goes, "A helicopter lure." And Roland just, "Are you? Oh, son, the helicopter lure. I know how to catch a world record."
no kidding. Do you think it was a setup, or you think they actually did it?
Oh, I think it was hands down. That's just my opinion. I'm like, any bass that big got to be that size. What the mistake we make as humans is we try to give human characteristics to those game animals and species that we pursue. And I've said that for a long time. We attempt to give them human characteristics. We attempt to assume they're smart and have intelligence. They're instinctive. They have a strong survival technique. People think that deer outsmarted them. No, he used his nose and his eyesight and his ears to avoid you because you're a foreign object in his environment, and that means a potential threat. So he's going to elude you as best as he can. They don't have intelligence. They possess incredibly strong survival instinct. Well, the same is true of fish. And any bass that got to be that size, they always say, well, those real big ones are just smarter than other fish. That's how they got. Now they're more cautious, they're more wary, and they have a super survival instinct that they predisposed to not make as many deadly mistakes. They've managed to survive that long by not making those mistakes. To think that a bass that size is going to eat something as ridiculous looking as the helicopter lure, I thought that was a total setup and just a shameful plug of a lure that I just considered was redundant, and if they made money on it, should consider themselves fortunate that they duped that many people. If anybody out there listening has caught anything on a helicopter lure, I want to hear about
Yeah,
it.
seriously. Send
Write
a
us,
photo.
send us an email, let us know, because I just don't think, I've never bought it. I did buy out in a state, a lady, her husband passed away. He was into fishing. My neighbor, she didn't know what to do with his stuff. She didn't want to, she was very shy and a nervous person. And without her husband, she was not comfortable having people come to the house to look at stuff. She said, I just want somebody to buy the whole thing. So my neighbor, who was friends with this lady, said, let me send my neighbor over. You can trust him. I'll vouch for him. And I looked at everything. He had good equipment. And so I offered her price for all of it. She just wanted to get rid of it. And she said, okay. So I got everything. And included in that, he had a kit of helicopter lures. I'm like, are you kidding me? He had St. Croix rods. He had Bass Pro rods. He had a lot of the rods that I have and a lot of the reels that I have. He had good quality equipment, and then he had a helicopter lure.
Talkin's revolutionary new helicopter lure.
Ooh,
Its
not even in
movement
stereo.
and colors grab the fish's attention. Its sound and scent trigger the strike. The helicopter lure is actually 4 lures in one. It's a buzz bait. It's a spinner bait. It's a deep water jig. Plus, it's a weedless.
That didn't occur to you, did it? It's 4 lures in one, Roy.
It is not.
worm, so you can fish it in any kind of cover. Call now and you'll receive 30 patented helicopter lures, each impregnated with Dr. Juice's helicopter scent. 5
Impregnated with
laser-sharp
Dr.
eagle claw
Juice. Were you a Dr. Juice guy?
Dr. Juice, that was we should have talked about that in our
scent
fishing
episode.
sense episode. I forgot about Dr. Juice. That was a scent that worked. I used it once and I found it to be productive. That I think that was to try to give the helicopter lure some credibility, but 4 lures in one, a deep water jig, really? If you look at the helicopter, it looks nothing like a jig. It looks like part
It looks like a kid's
of
toy.
a saltwater buzzbait is
Or
what
that.
it looks like.
Yeah. Here's the rest of it.
3 twist-resistant ball-bearing swivels.
So
and
there's your
5
ball-bearing swivel. That was a piece of garbage you talked about.
Yep.
way weights. Plus, we'll include the helicopter lure utility box and Roland Martin's how to cast and catch with the helicopter lure. And yet there's more. Order your helicopter kit
There's
now,
always
and we'll
more.
also include free Roland Martin's exciting new video customizing your copter for the catch of the day. The helicopter lure where
VHS.
the big boys meet the end of the line. To order your helicopter
VHS.
lure kit for only $29.95, call this toll-free number now.
Plus
Roland
shipping and
Martin's
handling.
helicopter lure-
I wonder how much it was for shipping and handling on a $30 item back then. $30.
Yeah.
You
Now,
get
this kit-
$29.95 or 6 easy flex pay payments of $5 a month.
The kit that I got in that estate sale, it still had every piece in it. I don't know if the guy ever tried it or if he did and just put it neatly back, but there ain't teeth marks on any of them. I would really be interested in hearing from any of our listeners if they ever used the helicopter lure and actually caught something on it. I'd really be interested in that. And no, we won't think less of you because you actually bought it. Promise. That was just one of those as seen on TV lures that I thought was 100% a gimmick, hands down, all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see any practical use for it. There's nobody I compete against that's throwing one in a tournament that I know of. But then there were novelty lures also. There was Head and Lures had one called the Big Bud. It was basically, they contracted Head and Lure Company, which was a very prominent lure company back in the day. Now they're under the Pradco heading. They own Headin and a bunch of other companies. But it was a miniature Budweiser beer can with a couple treble hooks and a little diving bill, and you fished it like a crankbait. I'm sure there were 1 or 2 fish here or there caught on it, probably some pickerel caught on it, but it was more a novelty thing than anything else. Anybody who was a big Budweiser fan probably bought it to add to their Budweiser collection. I don't think many people used them as actual fishing lures.
Mm.
So, you ever see those
I saw one this past weekend
at a
at a flea market shop.
yeah.
34
Yeah, that's
bucks.
where that's I bet you could probably find those on Amazon or one of those sites.
Mm-hmm.
It'd probably go for a lot more now as a collector's item. I don't know if they still they had them. I guess they had them in a variety of styles. Like you could probably buy them in Coke and Pepsi or anything like that.
How many pro fishermen did you see sponsored by by beer companies? Not too many, right?
Not too many. There was a while that the BASS circuit in the early days they were supported by Miller Brewing Company, and then I think in the 90s when Busch Beer came out, they signed on as a sponsor of the tour. And they lost some people over that because they required everybody to put a beer decal on their boat and wear a beer patch on their tournament shirt.
That's
And
terrible.
there was a very small handful of people that just stood on principle and said, I'm not going to support that.
Mm.
And they left the tour. And one of the best known ones that did that was Jimmy Houston, because he didn't drink beer. He didn't support drinking beer, and it went against his principles. And he said, I'm not going to do that. And that's why he joined the FLW tour, and he experienced some success over there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that he's a very well known, it's very widely known that he's a strong Christian, and he's got 2 Jimmy Houston outdoor stores in Oklahoma, and in which they do not sell beer. And he was told decades ago that his decision to not sell beer in his stores cost him 40 grand in profit every year. And that was decades ago. And he said, well, we'll do fine without it because I don't support that.
Yeah.
And God in turn blessed him for that decision. And he's done extremely well. He's probably one of the top 3 best known TV fishermen. You got Roland Martin, Bill Dance, and Jimmy Houston. That's the guys that everybody grew up watching,
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big controversy back then. He took a lot of heat from the tournament organization for making that decision, but it had a positive impact on his career. So yeah, I think there's a few beer companies that sponsor specific anglers. There's a couple that were sponsored by Crown Royal, which is hard alcohol. There's a market is wide open for non-endemic sponsors these days because a lot of people, that the crowd that watches bass fishing has grown exponentially. During COVID, all the sports were shut down and people started watching bass fishing on TV, and their market share grew tremendously.
Sure.
So that led to a lot of non-endemic sponsors jumping on saying, well, here's an audience we can reach if we sign on with this deal. Who knew that people watch fishing? Well, I did.
A lot of, just about every, really just about every potential customer that they had, not every, but a lot of dads home from work Saturday before mowing the lawn, watching the fishing shows on ESPN.
Yep. What are you doing? Aren't you? I'm letting the grass dry.
Exactly. I'm having a cup of coffee. Why can't I watch TV and have a cup of coffee?
Right. I'm letting the grass dry. Don't want me to slip, do you? Excuses. Anything to watch fishing.
Exactly.
How about, I don't remember the names of them, but there were a few of those novelty lures that came out. They were battery powered and they had their own swimming action.
Yeah.
And some of them had LED lights and emitted sound. Whole problem I had with that, and I never subscribed to those either, but generally electronic things are a wee bit on the sensitive side. Now you've got an electronic transmitter inside a plastic lure that emits sound and makes these little LED flashing lights to attract fish. I don't know what fish in freshwater eat that flashes. and emits LED lights.
Mhm.
I don't know what that's supposed to represent,
Lightning,
but you're expecting fish to grab this thing, to crush this thing,
because it
and it's
blinked at
got
him.
this yeah, it's got electronics in it. How long you think that's gonna hold up?
Yeah.
Just, not a great design idea, but I imagine people bought some.
The rattle trap was great.
The rattle trap is great.
Is great.
That's
Well, the
no
first
gimmick
ones
there.
the
They
first
catch
ones I
fish.
think were better though because they had the better weight to them because they were lead. Was it lead paint? Is that what it was? There's lead paint on them, or was it lead inside the bait?
Lead inside.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. They originally weren't designed like that. Cotton Cordell had a lure called the Hot Spot, and I think that's where the rattle trap craze all started. These weren't rattling baits, they were silent, and Cotton Cordell had that Hot Spot. It was the same design as a rattle trap. It was a lipless crankbait. You just threw it out and wound it back, and it vibrated and shimmied, and the vibrations and the flash caused it to replicate a bait fish, and fish ate them like crazy. They had a single lead ball in there, epoxied in place, so you could get casting distance, and so that it would sink and dive. You would just count it down to the level you wanted,
Right.
and then retrieve it back. But there was a run of those where the epoxy didn't cure correctly, and those lead balls would eventually work loose. And people were using them and started catching more fish on the ones that had those balls, because it would rattle.
Yeah.
And as it shimmied, it would vibrate and rattle. And they noticed different times they could catch a lot more fish on the ones that rattled. And so they were doing everything to try to knock those balls loose inside those lures so they could make them rattle. So they were called the old one knocker because it had one lead ball in it. And so they started designing lures that didn't have them epoxied in place, and enter the rattle trap and lures like that. And they absolutely catch fish. But then there was concern that, decades later, that fish are conditioned to those baits that rattle. So they started making ones that were silent. You can buy them either way now. You
do
can
whatever you want.
buy baits that rattle or are silent.
I'll tell you what else it was known for.
What's that?
Snagging. All the time.
Well, depending on where you threw it, yeah.
When I was a kid, we gave my dad, i.e. me, a couple rattle traps for Father's Day one year. And
yeah, I like that.
he never even used them. No, I took them out because he didn't fish enough. And I took them out and got them. I lost both of them in the same afternoon. I'm pretty sure they both went. I had the small one and the large one. Had a rock bass paint on it, and then the other one was just a regular smallmouth. Like baby.
That's what you get for buying your dad a lure you intended to use.
Well, Mom should have bought extra ones.
That's called karma.
She should have bought extra ones. I told her.
Yeah.
I told her when she got them, like, can I have two? And she's like, no. I was like, why? Because they're for your father. It's Father's Day. And I'm like, but we're in Ames now, and I want one.
Tremendously productive technique with the rattle trap style baits. Right now, as we're coming into the spring of the year, as the grass grows up, is to throw it across these grass flats before the grass is, topped
Longer.
out,
Yeah.
and just figure out the sweet spot to count it down to, whereas you retrieve it, you feel it just ticking the tops of that grass and snap it loose.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when it does that quick burst, when you snap it loose, it triggers a reaction strike. That's a well-known technique. It works better with the ones that rattle.
So does that do it for our As Seen on TVs?
Well, there were a couple other things I wanted to bring up. Remember the Popil's Pocket Fisherman?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I have two of them here.
You still got them?
I've got, they're brown.
I had a friend who found one at a yard sale for $5, and he thought he was giving me the golden egg here. He's like, I got something you're going to love. You can't believe what I bought this because I knew you'd want to use it. And he hands me this Pocket Fisherman. I went, you serious? He goes, yeah. You never wanted one of those? I went, no, I have real fishing poles. Oh, but this is great. You can carry it anywhere. Now, here's the thing about that. Yeah, you can carry it anywhere. One of the selling features of that was
It folded.
you could throw it in the glove box of your car, and you're ready to fish anytime, any place.
But it's shaped like a blow dryer. You're out there fishing with a blow dryer.
think about the temperature. If you've got that in the glove box of your car's in the parking lot, you're at work all day in the summer,
8,000 degrees.
8,000 degrees in your car. Where are you supposed to store monofilament line? Says on every package,
Cool, dark
store
place.
in a cool, dry place. That is not the glove box in your car in August, sitting out there with the windows rolled up and the doors locked in the August heat in the parking lot on pavement all day. No. So you get time after work. Hey, I got that pocket fisherman. I can hit that pond on the way home I always drive by. And you pull out, you tie on a lure, you fire out a cast as far as you could with that piece of crap. And your lure goes flying off because your line is worthless because it's been in 8,000 degrees every day all summer. Good grief.
I bet they could probably, with the right weighted lure on one of those, though, I bet they could probably get some distance.
It had like a 6-inch rod that I think,
Yeah.
6 or 10-inch rod that telescoped
I think it was
out
like,
of it.
like 8, I think. Or it didn't it? I thought it folded.
Maybe it did.
I think it
He
folded
gave me
down.
that. I think it had pocket knife blades in it too, so that you could clean your catch. It was like the only thing you'd ever need to fish with. Yeah.
I've got the St. Croix fishing machine, which has a reel on it that looks like it's a telescoping rod, and then it's got a reel that looks like a film projector. It's very weird, like almost like a movie camera looking thing.
And that was made by St. Croix.
St. Croix was the one, and it had a nice case. I'll give them that.
They're an incredibly reputable.
I know. This is probably from like the 70s, I would imagine.
That would have to be. They become a prominent rod builder. I did see in researching for this episode, there was a product called the Instant Fisherman, and now it retailed for $99.95. If you Google Instant Fisherman at the shopping channel, if you just search that, you'll see the advertisement I did. They had an infomercial. It folded up to a compact size. You would unfold it, the rod telescoped out. You'd never assume that there was a fishing rod in this little compact package that it folds up to. But yeah, and they said you could put it in your glove compartment. Another novel idea for something with monofilament line. But they advertised that you can even catch sharks on this, and they actually showed a guy catching a shark.
Oh yeah, there it is. Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up right now. Hang on.
Instant Fisherman. I'd never heard of it, but I just thought it was pretty amazing.
Anywhere, anytime, for any fish. Introducing the new Instant Fisherman, the compact, steady, always ready to fish rod, reel, and fishing system that is so easy to use, you won't have to think twice about going fishing. You'll spend more time with your line in the water and less time messing with bulky equipment. And that's what fishing
shows the rod tip getting snapped in an electric window going up.
Yep, virtually indestructible.
Fisherman
yeah, I'll tell you what. The only thing I'd pull out of that advertisement is I already don't think twice about going fishing.
Once again, these are people that fish twice a year. Memorial Day and Father's Day. That's it.
Maybe Father's Day, and your dad goes, "Hey, where's those rattle traps you bought me? Let's get ice cream."
What happened to those? Hey, Dad, I lost them. Damn it! He'd yell.
What were you doing with them? Thought those were for me.
Can I have one thing? Can I just have one thing that you give me
that you don't use?
It's always, I took everything. I took every cool thing we ever gave him as a kid. God bless my father. Everything that was cool that we got for him, I took. He never used it, because that's the thing. When you get someone a gift that you want and then they don't use it, well,
yeah,
I think that that makes it okay.
It's all good.
Anyway. All right. Does that do it, sir?
Yeah, that's everything I wanted to cover. I'm sure we missed some, but
all right,
we covered some ground.
If there's one you can think of for us, of course, give us an email at anglerwithinpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, check out Roy's the Instagram, and that is all lowercase Roy Bilby, with some great stuff on there. I love your Instagram page.
I appreciate that.
I was actually going through my phone, and from like a couple of years ago, before we got back in touch, I just followed you on Instagram, and I sent more of my friends pictures of your fish. I'm like, I know this guy. He's a buddy of mine. I know this guy. I know him. My friend catches big fish. I don't, but my friend does.
Yeah. Here's another one he caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy. You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
Well, I appreciate that. I try.
Yeah.
And as always, the whole point of this podcast is to help everyone out there tap into their angler within.